Hi, this is Rick Olson, and we'll be talking about sustainable Cambodia today. Now, Sustainable Cambodia is a project that is affecting change in Cambodia, community by community. Now, I first and I first became aware of Sustainable Cambodia when I went to the Rotary International Convention in Houston last June. And in a booth next to ours was a Sustainable Cambodia booth with this brochure on the table announcing a 10-day tour of Cambodia for less than $1,000. Well, that was a bargain I couldn't pass up. So I signed up. Now, Cambodia is obviously west of Vietnam. And what I learned there was that the US bombing in Cambodia during the Vietnam War killed an estimated 150,000 Cambodians during that bombing. Um, the bombing also destroyed homes and livelihood of many people and really disrupted the whole society of Cambodia. And some scholars believe that really increased support for the Khmer Rouge among the Cambodian peasantry. Now, the Khmer Rouge had a dictator, a leader, Pol Pot, and he had an idea that the best communist society is really the people back on the farms growing food. And so he forcibly emptied out the cities, all the people who had education, businesses, and other than agriculture, he just pushed them out to the farms. And in fact, about a million to maybe as many as 3 million people died in this process with starvation and so forth. But also 1.3 million of them were suspected victims of execution. Anybody that he didn't want around, he just had killed. And when we were in Phnom Penh, we visited the killing fields, which was just a real somber experience, where just people were taken there to just be killed. Awful lot like Auschwitz in the World War II. So after Pol Pot was driven out in 1979, Cambodia was left with very little infrastructure, very much lack of food and water. Um, Hundreds of thousands of displaced families, and very few educated adults remaining. Now, these villages were back, like set back decades, maybe a century or two, just back with no electricity, no latrines, no safe drinking water, growing the traditional rice in the rice fields. Children were carrying water for hours and doing field work rather than going to school. It was just not a situation that's good for any kind of economic development. Many suffered from malnutrition, and kids were raising kids. So, but between 2009 and 2019, there was a surge of growth and widespread income gains. During that decade, poverty rate dropped from 33.8% down to 17.8%, with almost 2 million Cambodians escaping poverty. But then came the COVID pandemic, and about 460,000 people dropped back below the poverty line. So Cambodia remains on the list of developing countries, and most of its citizens continue to live in rural areas and experience poverty. For example, out of its population of 16 million people, about 12 million of those lack access to a reliable, safe drinking water, and 3.8 million lack access to improved sanitation solutions. So, not a good situation. Well, Sustainable Cambodia actually started in about 2005 when Brian Lasky went there on a trip to help teach some kids. And his mother, Sylvia, says, "Hey, while you're at it, can you find a few kids that I could sponsor?" Well, he did a little looking around and he replied back, "Hey, I found 60." Well, that's how it all started, with really emphasizing education, with preschools and then community primary schools, uh, feeding kids and helping them be healthier, then enrichment schools, and ultimately university scholarships. So it's come a long way over the years. But Mrs. Lasky, Sylvia Lasky, funded the memorial school, the first one, a high school, and then another one later on was also funded, which currently provide over 500 high need students with supplementary education, math, career language, English, computers, dance, and tutor classes to these 9th to 10th grade students who have to take the state exam to get into the universities. But the students thrive in this learning environment with small classes and very caring teachers. Well, very quickly on this trip, we learned that you could sponsor a student for $300 per year for kindergarten through 12th grade students, or only $500 per year for a college or university student. Just blew my mind that a student could go to college in Cambodia for $500 per year when we know what it costs here in the United States. So they have been successful in taking people through the system and getting them into universities or beyond, over 450 of them in that status. That's just an incredible track record. Really, really neat. Now, first night we were there was a banquet, and many of the either graduates or current university students came to have dinner with us. And one of them, Mally Noun, told her story. She says, I am the daughter who was raised by a single mother. I haven't received love, support, and care from my father. My mother is my hero. She told me that even though we have difficulties, we still have hope. One year, we lost everything. My dear grandma died. We lost our house and land. But with the power of hope, we made it. I learned that we could live without everything, but I could not live without hope. And Sustainable Cambodia is really the organization that is providing hope for so many students there in Cambodia. Well, probably on the second day of the trip, once we went to the schools, we went visit this first school. And as you can see, the students, they're all lined up to greet us. And as we walk down through there, a young girl comes and hands me this little card that's on the picture on the bottom here. And I open it up and says, hi, my name is Bunny. I am in the 4th grade and I am 13 years old. I lived with my grandma because I'm from a far off province that doesn't have good education, and my parents have sent me here to live with my grandmother. Interesting. Well, she puts this scarf over my neck, and then I continue on down the path a few steps, and I look back. And I walk back to her, and I ask, do you have a sponsor? And someone next to her says, no, she doesn't have a sponsor. Well, I put my arm around her and said, well, you do now. And she got a very big smile and pleased, and she grabbed my hand and walked me down the lane down to the school. That young girl stole my heart. She was just so awesome. And I visited this school twice more on this trip, and every time she'd see me, she'd come running up to me and give me a hug and grab my hand and then lead me around to show me things at the school. So a wonderful young woman. And I know that although she's in 4th grade and 13, she's behind her class, her people her age. But I know with the support she'll get at Sustainable Cambodia, she too has that hope, and she too can succeed and end up at a university. So that's pretty cool. I really love that idea. So here's a picture of her on the left here. Both pictures, it's her. And she was always smiling. And on the with us on this one picture is one of the students that have gone all the way through the university, is graduated, and now works for Sustainable Cambodia as the sponsorship coordinator. Another fabulous young woman. So, well, the Sustainable Cambodia program takes kids from preschools and into the community schools, and then on to the enhanced schools or the enrichment schools. But one of the things we learned was Sustainable Cambodia insists that the students go get all the education they can in the community schools, the public schools, and then provide enrichment for them so that they get every opportunity to learn. And that has really worked. In the two high schools, they also have youth clubs, which are very, very similar to our Interact clubs, based on Rotary principles. And what we found was a very motivated, excited students who know that they have a future. As long as they perform, they will have a future. As you can see, they're a pretty excitable group. And I got to know two of them more closely. At one banquet, I had a good chance to talk to this young lady, just a wonderful young woman. But another girl who stole my heart in this when we visit school was Raxme, just a fabulous young woman. And what we do with these women, both of those already have sponsors, but those two end with money. I'll be sending letters monthly to them, but try to be somewhat motivational. And then they send letters back like this to me of what they're going on and what they're doing and so forth. So pretty cool. I hope that I'm having some influence on their lives. Well, as good as their education program is, Sustainable Cambodia realized that this was not a sustainable program unless they work with the families in the villages. So they began working with district and global grants in the villages. So what they work with is village empowerment training, safe water, agriculture, sanitation, hygiene, and income generation. What they do is they go investigate a number of villages and then select the villages that they feel are ready for this project. Not every group has the leadership or otherwise is really ready to do it. So they spend a year before the project, a year in the project, and then a year after the project to be working with them really closely. Now, they work with the Rotary Club of Persat as the host club, and they've done numerous grants through the years. Like, for example, the one they're just finishing this year, a big one, $236,000 some dollars, worked with 5 villages and 3 community schools. They did significant wash projects with deep wells, rooftop rainwater collection or harvesting systems, 130 biofilters, so they have safe drinking water, 42 community ponds, latrines, wash trainings. But then to kind of make this sustainable, they form village development committees and wash committees and self-help groups in 4 of those villages so that they continue on their own without having to have their hands held on into the future. But as part of the income generation, they teach them how to garden. So out of this project, there were 75 home gardens, and they provided 35 cows for what they call the pass-on program, where a member of the community gets a cow, and then they raise the cow, but the first offspring has to be donated to another village member. So that's a program that apparently has been working successfully for them. But the project before that was 2016, where they worked with 4 villages. It's a little bit smaller grant, 117,000. Again, wash projects with wells and rainwater harvesting and biofilters and ponds and so forth. And the same village development committees, wash committees, self-help groups, and 100 home gardens. And this time there was 20 cows. And they've done many more global and district grants over the years. They've got a really round wheel. They've got a program that really works, and they just keep rolling it and rolling it and rolling it and making a significant impact in that part of the world. The end result is you end up with women empowered. For example, we met Mrs. Chin, who's 51 years old in what we call an after village. She said, we received vegetable seeds from Sustainable Cambodia, and my husband and I prepared the soil around my house to grow those seeds. I followed the methods that I learned through the training that was provided. And she was all excited and smiley and said, now we do not need to leave our homes to find jobs. We have sustainable natural vegetables to eat every day, and we get income from selling vegetables in the local market. this project has transformed her life and many others in these after villages. Well, Sustainable Cambodia also, has wells being drilled and so forth, but then they provide these tanks, which they build themselves. And in fact, in one of the hands-on projects we did, we built some tanks for rainwater collection system. The families get empowered with being able to grow vegetables and then the cows and so forth. But they also build these biosand filters, so they have safe drinking water for the first time. Makes a significant difference in the health status. A lot more kids end up going to school instead of missing days sick. And they also have rainwater rooftop collection systems, and these are one of the tanks, a sample of one of the tanks that we made. That's in that self-help group or project group. We spent time, and they built latrines. And this is an example of the animal pass-on program with one of the cows. But one of the things we saw that I had not seen before is community ponds. Apparently, it rains a heck of a lot in the rainy season, and then they have some really dry times. And so they dig these huge ponds, collects water during the rainy season, and then they have water that they can grow their crops during the drier season as well. And so the end result is they have agriculture for sustainable income instead of simply those traditional rice fields, which are low value crops in those areas. So the current year project, global grant they're working on, is going to be over $200,000, a 2-year project from this year through 2025. And they expect to have the project proposal submitted to the Rotary Foundation before the end of June. This will affect 570 families with 3,000 people in 3 villages. These were 3 villages selected out of the 8 that they investigated. And we visited one of these villages that we call the Before Project. Again, major wash project, water wells, rooftop rainwater harvesting systems, biosand filters, community ponds, latrines, wash training. And then they have what they call the 250 Days for Girls, which basically provides sanitary pads for the girls and training about menstruation and try to eliminate the taboos and stuff that goes on with that. Yeah. So girls can go to school and not worry about their periods. Again, though, they work with by forming the village development committees, wash committees, and self-help groups. And in this project, they project to be 85 home gardens and 35 cows in the pass-on program. Major impact again in those villages. So the reason doing these presentations to many clubs around the country is to see if your club can help fill the remaining hole in funding the 2022-23 project. Last I heard, it was about $10,000 hole left, so we've got a little time before the end of June, but we expect we can do that. And if you can help, that would be awesome. If that does not fit into your current year budget, maybe you can look ahead to next year's budget, next year's budget. And because I'm sure Sustainable Cambodia will be coming up with yet another project they can propose to the Rotary Foundation for next year. But the other reason for doing these proposals, or these presentations, I should say, is really to invite you to come visit with us. For a 10-day tour with all the housing, all the food, all the meals, transportation, and all that for less than $1,000 in Phnom Penh, visiting the killing fields and the Imperial Palace. In Siem Reap, you see the heritage site of Angkor Wat. This is just really a great value when you compare with other tours, and you just absolutely have a great time together. But for me, the highlight of my experience there was with the kids. It was just plain awesome meeting those kids and those young folks that they know they're going to succeed. They're motivated. Wow, that is really cool. Now, many of the travelers brought educational supplies with them, which they left at the school and presented them to the school and the kids, which obviously was very much appreciated. But then on one of the nights at a banquet, we heard that we could buy bicycles, very high quality, sturdy bicycles for $55. And of the total, about 90 travelers in the January and February tour groups, we funded 94 of these bicycles so that kids who are living far away, 5, 10 kilometers or more, could ride a bicycle to school and get to school on time conveniently and so forth, so they could get educated. They don't have to miss days. So we just that major impact on the lives of many, many kids. Okay, so here's the contact information for Sustainable Cambodia. And as you can see, the people on the board are widely distributed from Florida, New York, Salt Lake City, Utah, several from Australia. This is a well-funded, well-organized group that, like I said, they've got a round wheel and they just keep it rolling. Now, my contact information was provided in one of the first slides, and also in the emails that I've sent to your president. So with that, we can open up for questions.